Hello, I'm Rosie, and this is my June book haul. I'm not going to be buying any more books this month because I'm putting myself back on a book buying ban, which I'll hopefully be keeping, so this may be the last book haul in a while. I have 11 books to show you today, so I will just get started. I'm going to start with the books that I've already read, because then I'll be able to give you a brief description about them, and then move on to books I haven't read yet, but I'm hoping to read soon. There's only 3 books that I've already read already, so this section will be quite quick. The first one is Day Shift by Charlaine Harris. This is the second book in the Midnight Texas series, and in this one there's a different mystery. Manfred finds himself embroiled in essentially a federal investigation, which is not really what the town of Midnight needs, and that combined with a new hotel opening up in the town just brings a whole bunch of reporters and media that no one wants, because Midnight is a town for people who are running away from their past or have secrets that they don't want uncovered. Not to mention, there's a little boy who's moved in with the Rev, which is really exciting because the Rev is such a mysterious character, and there's something about this boy that just adds to the supernatural world that Harris has created in this book. I really enjoyed this book, and there's a lot of focus on the characters we didn't see so much in the first book, Midnight Crossroad, so I'm just really pleased that I got to read this book. I then have Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This book is his debut novel, I believe, and it's about the city of Elantris, which once was a city of gods, where people woke up one day with glowing skin and the ability to do magic. But then suddenly something happens and the city loses its magic. And this book takes place 10 years later as a neighbouring country tries to take over the country in which Elantris is based and which the main story is based. And it's got politicalness, it's got magic, it's got character development, and I just really love this book, and it just makes me want to read even more Brandon Sanderson. Lastly, of my read books, I have Paper Towns by John Green. I got this book and read it for the biennial bibliothon, which is currently happening, or it's not currently happening if you're watching this after it's finished, but I didn't enjoy this book as much as I enjoyed the other 2 books. It had a lot of things that I would enjoy, like certain characters and character traits that kind of grated with me, and the plot seems slightly unrealistic for one that's a contemporary novel. I think that's my issue with contemporaries. I don't quite believe that they can actually happen, whereas fantasy I can suspend my disbelief a bit more. It was a good book, and it's another book that's a lot of fun and nothing too difficult either. I forgot to say what it's about. Q, who is neighbours with Margot, and he's completely in love with her, and then one night she goes on an adventure with him, and the next morning she's vanished, and he wants to find out what's happened to her and teams up with his friends to follow the clues she's left behind. So it's got a road trip and it's adventure and it's a mystery. So yeah, it's got a lot of good things in it too. And now the books I haven't read yet. The first of these is The Capital of Malta by Nicolas Montserrat. So this book is about a priest and on the island of Malta during the Second World War, and how he tries to help the homeless and I believe refugees. I don't really know that much about it, but I'm going to be going to Malta on holiday this summer, so I'm quite looking forward to reading this and learning a bit more about the country and what there is, and a bit of a history involving the World War, because while this is fiction, it apparently is quite realistic in its portrayal of the events that occurred during the Second World War, and my voice is going, so I shall move on quickly. I then have a collection of crime books written by Gaio Marsh. I'm really sorry about the pronunciation. I have no idea how to pronounce this name. Each of the stories are about Chief Detective Inspector Roderick Allen, and from what I've heard, these books are really good, so I'm really looking forward to reading these. Then I have The Air Affair by Jasper Ford. This is a book about a detective called Thursday, and she's investigating the disappearance of literary figures. I believe the main thing in this one is Jane Eyre has disappeared, and I think they're being held to ransom according to the back. I don't really know much about it except that it's supposed to be really good, and I love reading books, and I love books, and I love stories about books, so this book should be perfect, and I'm really excited to read it. I then have The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. I don't really know much about this book except that it's about someone with telepathic powers in a world where having telepathic powers is against the law. I've heard a bunch of good things about this book, so I'm quite interested in seeing what the story's like, and hopefully it'll be another good series for me to read. A lot of my new books are series. Why do I do this to myself? I have high hopes for this one, and it just looks really good. So yeah. Lastly, of the paperbacks is The Gospel of Loki by Joanne Harris. I went to an author talk for Joanne Harris talking about the Gospel of Loki, which was really interesting, and Loki's one of my favourite god figures from mythology, so I'm really looking forward to reading a book of the Norse myths written from his perspective, which is what these are, and it's written in kind of modern day language, so it should be quite accessible as well. Onto the hardbacks now. Crashing Heaven by Al Robertson. I won this in a competition on Twitter. This is a science fiction book with a really cool cover, that's such a cool cover, and I don't really know much about it, but from what I gather the main character, Jack Foster, is like an agent, and this other character called Hugo Fist is kind of an implant in his brain that takes over in certain situations where there's violence to be needed, and it's coming to the end of Jack Foster's contract, and when that ends, Hugo Fist gets to take over the body. So it's kind of a race against time. I think there's another mystery involved, but it all sounds really interesting, and I'm curious to see what it's going to be like because I haven't read proper science fiction in a while. I then have Reading the World, Confessions of a Literary Explorer, which is written by Anne Morgan. This book is about Anne Morgan, who decided to read a book from the globe's 196 independent countries and another one. So I'm quite looking forward to this one because I know that I don't read many books written by diverse authors, and I would really like to do that more. So I'm hoping this book will give me a kind of guide to seeing what other books are out there and exploring a wider range of books and authors. And it just sounds really interesting. I really enjoy books along these lines, I really enjoy A Year of Reading Dangerously. Last but not least, I have An Ember in the Ashes by Sabata here. I won this book as well on another Twitter competition. So many competitions on Twitter. I hadn't realised how many there were, so I'm kind of on a competition entering ban as well because I have too many books, and while the book buying ban saves money, competitions end up with more books, so I'm on a competition ban as well, unless I see a book I really, really want, like An Ember in the Ashes. I was so excited to win this. I've heard so many good things about it, and it just sounds fascinating. I've read a brief sample of it, and when it came to the end, I was just like, where's the rest of it? I want more. So I've got this book now. I'm looking forward to reading this. That is it for my June book haul. Let me know if you've read any of the books I've mentioned, and any I should get to first, because there is a lot of books there, and I don't actually have that much time to read at the moment, which is tragic. I will see you next time. Goodbye!